Welcome to the Employment Services Show podcast. I am your host, Rana Kodahi, and I would love to introduce my special guest, Ron Maxwell. Ron is the CEO of VERTO, and he's a highly accomplished senior executive leader with more than 20 years experience in the commercial sector. He drives strong organizational performance, particularly in the not-for-profit sector, where he has held a number of senior level management positions. Since 2014, Ron has led VERTO as a chief executive officer, and it's been a period of significant change and growth, with VERTO now in a strong position both financially and in terms of structure. Under Ron's leadership, VERTO has expanded to 40 locations across New South Wales, the ACT and Victoria. Prior to joining VERTO, Ron did spend 7 years as a CEO of Western College Dubbo, and in 2018, under his direction, VERTO negotiated a successful merger between these two successful organizations, which is quite impressive. In addition to his role at VERTO, Ron sits on a number of boards, including Community Colleges Australia, the Independent Tertiary Education Council of Australia, the National Australian Apprentices Association, and the New South Wales Skills Board Advisory Group. Wow, you are so accomplished, Ron. That's why I'm very, very excited to have you here for you to share your wealth of knowledge with our audience.
Thank you.
So how's your day going?
Look, it's wonderful. It's a bit cooler here in Bathurst today. I'm out in rural New South Wales, so enjoying the countryside, but a little cool.
A little cool. So I'm guessing they're not that strict on lockdown out in Bathurst? No,
it's quite relaxed out here, which is really nice, because I do spend a lot of time in Sydney, and they're a bit more stricter there. But it's wonderful to see the restrictions starting to lift, and just keeping my fingers crossed they continue to lift.
Yeah, me too. I was a bit disappointed for Melbourne, but I guess they have to do what they have to do. And just one question, I don't have this question on my list, but I wanted to ask you, which is your favorite state out of all of Australia?
New South Wales.
Yes. I knew it. Okay.
The New South Wales Blues all the way as well.
Awesome. All right. So I am going to go straight into my first question. I heard you, because I listened to a podcast where you were a guest, and I really enjoyed that episode. I learned a lot. And there was something that you said which was quite profound. You said, disagreeing with the CEO is not a career limiting move, because we need all the aspects of decision-making. Now, can you explain to our audience what you mean by that?
Certainly, Rana. I think, running a successful business, one of the keys to that is making good decisions, and making good decisions all the time. Sometimes you make the odd bad one, and, that's life. But really, you need to get it right more times than you get it wrong. And if you can, get it right every time. You'll never do that on your own. And there was an old style of thinking, and when I first came into the workforce, the first manager I had, if you disagreed with them, that was a career limiting move. It was very much a groupthink environment, and it was all centered around one person. Successful organisations these days is not centered around one person, and it's the input of a multitude of people. We have a leadership team here at VERTO, and I rely heavily on their advice. When I think we're heading down a certain path, I'll talk about my decision, what decision I intend on making, and give them a chance to give their side of that process and really what they think. And I've had a few times where I was going to head down one path, and I had probably about 70% of the leadership group saying, if we do that, this is what's going to happen. And I'm really glad I didn't make that decision, because I made it in consultation with them. We decided not to go down that path and go a different way, and it led to greater success. So it's really critical that you have a diverse range of opinions when you're looking at making key decisions in an organisation. Because as I said, you get it wrong, it takes a long time to fix things up if you make a poor one.
Absolutely. And I love, because a lot of people don't realize diversity, which I also heard you say, is a range of opinions as well.
Absolutely.
And thanks for sharing that. 70% of your staff or people that were working alongside you said, no, it's not a great move. And they probably saved a lot of headache down the road. So I am going to go into my next question. Now, I want to talk about the future of work, because I know you do write a lot about the future of work. So where do you see the future of employment heading, and how can people in the workforce prepare for the new world?
Well, it's really been interesting, especially over this, since February when COVID started to appear on the horizon, in a very profound way. Things started to change, and I think that's really changed where the future of employment's going to head as well. We all talk about flexible work environments, but no one really does it. But COVID forced us to do it. And we now live in a world where we know we can live like that and we can work like that in a flexible way. There's one thing about VERTO and that's we have a management team, as I was talking about earlier, which is our leadership team, but they're geographically dispersed. And I think that's going to be what we will see more and more as we go forward, because people can work remotely. We've proven that over the last few months. We've proven that in this organisation for the last few years. But you can do that efficiently and you still can get things done. One of the things that employers that I increasingly see the employers are looking for is critical thinking skills. And that seems to be something that's fallen by the wayside over the last number of years, where we see people coming through. And employers are placing a very weighting that in their interviews and looking for that particular skill, because the world we live in now is quite complex. Things are not as simple as what they used to be. And we need to analyse, we need to think critically. And that comes back to that diverse decision-making as well. In making decisions, we need to pull things apart. Think about what's going to happen if we go down that path and what that means. Because, as I said, you get things wrong. In these days, it's very hard to pull back, and it's very hard to get things back on track again in a timely manner. So really, we're going to see a number of things happen. I think we're going to see a lot more in the way of flexible work arrangements. There could be, as we go forward, a mix of working from home and working in the office, because the vaccine is certainly not something that's on the immediate horizon. I think that's going to be quite a few years away. So the way we're working at the moment at VERTO is we have two teams. So the staff have been split into a yellow or a blue team, and then we rotate those teams. A couple of days, blue team comes in, yellow team will work from home, and then they swap over. And that's been proven to be quite successful. Now, when we first embarked on this process, especially with COVID, I was quite concerned because I thought we would lose a reasonable amount of productivity with people working from home. That hasn't been the case. We have lost some, but nowhere near to the degree as what I thought we would lose. The reason why we do the teams and rotate them in, and we also change who's on what team as well. So we're just going through that process very, very shortly. The reason for that is to keep people engaged and to make them feel a part of the workplace still, because the last thing we want is people in an isolated environment for long periods of time. So that brings them back in a couple of days a week. They can interact with their fellow workers. And what we're doing, as I said, is changing the team so they interact with different people. So it just keeps them feeling engaged in a cohesive workforce.
I like some of the things that you said, and I do agree with you. The future of work is flexible work arrangement. And when I worked in several like I used to work at KPMG and PwC, and that was a norm, working from home. But then I remembered, because I also worked in employment services, the big difference between working at a place that was so like years ahead. They used to bring in futurists to come in and consult with us. And yeah, that was about 4 years ago. So what you said, just to recap, flexible and remote workplace, and at the same time critical thinking skills where you can get a diverse team, and you need to keep people engaged. And I think I've spoken to a few employers and they did say that productivity has gone up, which surprised them.
Yes.
I think also they said that the introverts were thriving and the extroverts were dying to get back to the office. So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, we found the same thing, and I'm an introvert, so I've been in heaven the last few months.
Yeah, same here. To be honest with you, this is my first day back at the office in 4 months, although I could have come anytime because it's not many people, but I always just made an excuse. I just thought, but then I thought I'll come in today because I can't have the internet stuffing up on me when I have a podcast with you. So I came in. Okay, so I want to go into my next question. I'm sure that I know that you've worked in, because you're an RTO, but also you have employment services.
Yes.
So I just want to kind of hone in on the employment services side. You've worked alongside, and I even think I think you've worked in employment services in business development, I'm guessing.
Yes.
And you've worked your way up to a CEO. Now, what does it take for somebody who has come in as an employment practitioner? What does it take for them to be successful in the role?
What I see, what's successful in the role now and the attributes as opposed to, say, 3 to 4 years ago are two different things. Years ago, it used to be you used to have to care about people and want to assist people. That's still one key attribute. But what's needed now is much more of a rounded person in that role. So it needs someone that is driven, because really the contract has a number of drivers in it and they are KPI driven. And if we don't keep the star rating up, then we don't have a contract. And, that's every employment services provider. So it's critical that we're able to keep driving the results through, but we still need to be able to engage and care with the people that we're dealing with, because they're not a commodity. They're not a box, an economic widget that moves along a conveyor belt. They're a person. And that's really, really critical to keep that engagement with them. But what's really critical now is the ability to be able to engage with employers, because it's really matching the two, isn't it? That's how we get an outcome, really matching a job seeker to an appropriate job with an appropriate employer. So it's really, we need a real rounded person that's able to tick all those boxes. Now, you may think that in some ways those skills are almost schizophrenic in some way because there's such an opposite ends, but it's not the case, because I'm pleased to say we have quite a number of them working in our organisation. And in employment services, once you get a good staff member, you need to hang on to them. You need to look after them because they're few and far between. But so really it's someone who's quite rounded, thrives in that role now, compared to in previous years or under previous reiterations of the contract in the past. It was basically just need to care about someone.
You've nailed it, because, and what you said is interesting, because I have worked in employment services, and I remember people that had been in employment services for a long time were saying, employment services has changed. It used to be all about caring for people, but now, they're sales driven. But at the end of the day, unless we can get people into work and get them in front of the employer, then we're going to lose. They're going to lose. I mean, the job seeker and the government is trusting you to get that person into work. So you said a rounded individual. And I remember in the UK, when I worked in employment services, our CEO, I think it was the CEO or maybe the general manager, he used to always say, we're compassionate, like we have a compassionate heart, but we're commercially minded to be successful. And that was their slogan, that we're compassionate. Yeah.
And that's not dissimilar to how we articulate what's needed in the role to our staff, because the compassion is still really important. But sometimes there's tough love too. And but really getting the outcome of employment for someone is the thing that can change their life.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's a kind of a topic that, because I have been delivering training for a while in employment services, and I even met staff where, no one told me that this is part of my role, or I feel that this is not like because suddenly the role changed, and that's fair enough. But, sometimes they come into the role and they have no idea that you have to get on the phone and you basically have to know how to sell as well. So yeah. All right. I want to ask you now, this is for the leaders out there that are listening, because I also want to give them some value as well. Say I was a senior leader going into an underperforming site, and I've just started this role, whether I'm an external consultant or whether I'm coming in and I've been hired full time to do this role. And this site is underperforming. It's a 2-star, not just one site, maybe there's a few sites in the territory, and we're about to lose these sites. What advice would you give them? Like, what would they be like their 30-day, 90-day plan?
First thing for if there's a 90-day plan is buy more time, because as we know in employment services, the outcomes are 26-week driven. So we need that. But really, what you've got to do, and I know when I've been into underperforming organisations, first thing you need to do is listen. Have a look to see what's going on. 9 times out of 10, when you go into an organisation that's underperforming, it'll have a really toxic culture. That's one thing that I've noticed is quite common. When you have a positive culture and a performing culture, the organisation just hums because everyone's in tune and everyone's on the same page. Now, that can be caused by a number of things. It could have been previous management. It could be just people don't understand the role. People may not be a fit for that role. As we talked about the attributes of the ideal consultant previously, it could be populated with people that don't have anywhere near those attributes. So you really got to have a look at the culture of the organisation and find out what's gone wrong, what's caused it to be toxic. Now, fixing culture is not something that happens overnight, but if you're going to build a successful organisation, you have to start from day one, and you've got to change that culture. And that's almost a thing that continues to evolve on a continuum. It just keeps happening and happening because you've got to keep adjusting and changing. But that's one of the critical things. Obviously, process is the next thing I've found in underperforming organisations. There's primarily a lack of process, and people don't really understand what that is. So they don't know how to do things, how to make things happen, and that's frustrating for a lot of people. And when those two things are present, employees feel disengaged. When they're disengaged, they just switch off, and you can easily tell that. First thing you would do is you talk to HR and you look at the absentee rate. And I almost guarantee if it's underperforming, it's high. And that's one measure we use here at VERTO, and that's something I constantly keep my eye on. HR bring reports monthly on absenteeism, and you look at it. We have a benchmark, and we just want to make sure that we're well below that benchmark, because if it starts to creep up, next thing you'll see is performance will dip off. So they're probably a couple of the key things, but usually it comes back to culture, process, and, the two really determine the level of engagement of the staff. And staff engagement is the critical thing, but those two things I talked about previously are common drivers to ensure staff engagement. Yeah. They're the things I'd be looking at first off. As I said, you need to buy yourself some time.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, 90 days isn't much, but sometimes, because I've had leaders reach out and they're like, I have 90 days. I need to get it up or get the performance happening, things like that. But absolutely, I like what you said about looking at the absentee rates, because that's something that I'm also a consultant, but I've never thought about the absentee rates. I don't know why, but I've gone in and I have done case interviews, and it's usually the same theme. It's either there's a leader that is quite threatening, or it's a toxic culture where the staff, they're kind of, it's like everyone's gossiping, or they don't like their jobs, or there's a kind of where they split, or there's bullying, things like that. But yeah, the process is also important as well. And what about if someone is good at culture and people, but is not good with process or technology? What would they do there? Or even finance? You need to get that person.
It's great to find all that in the one person, but sometimes that's not possible. And it doesn't mean that you can't be a leader if you're not rounded in that way. It just means you need to be self-aware, and you need to understand yourself, and you need to understand where the weaknesses are. And where the weaknesses are, you need to find someone who's good at those things and let them do that part of it for you. But keep engaged with them so you're learning about it all the time. Yeah. But you can't fix everything. That's the thing. And I always say that when you go in, okay, and an organisation starts performing better, you may have facilitated and pushed it in that direction, but it's the staff that make it perform. You can't interview every job seeker. You can't find them every job. You're relying on staff to do that for you. So that's the key to the whole process. You need them engaged. You need them on board. You need them on the bus that you're on, heading in the same direction. and be willing to want to do this and make it work. And that's what you need to do, engage the staff and get them to the point where they want to fix this. They want to go on the journey with you.
Yeah.
And then once you achieve that, you'll find things will turn quickly. Things will, because people are engaged and they're all heading in the same direction. You'll notice, because I walked into one organisation I came into that I had to do some repair work to. I walked into one of their offices, and you know how you walk in, it's like a morgue? That was the vibe. That was the vibe.
Wow, okay.
Now, after fixing, working and getting things right, I had someone who was with me, this is sometime later, and walked in and said, what a buzz you can feel in that office now. See, it's chalk and cheese. It's because the staff are engaged now where they weren't before. And that's the real key to that. And as I said, there's a number of factors that can cause that disengagement. It's a matter of identifying those and being able to move reasonably quickly to repair them. Culture takes a bit longer, but you can engage staff quickly.
Yeah, engagement is everything, and it's so undervalued. And I think, especially with those technically brilliant leaders, they might think, well, I'm good at what I do. We need to be good at technology and processes, but they might forget about the human side of communication, which is and influencing and getting a buy-in from people as well. I love what you said. Thank you so much for sharing that. So I want to now talk about employers. Now, as we know, there are most employers, they're on board with diversity, but there are a few, depending where they are, I don't know, with their values politically, they might push back on diversity because they're like, I just want the best person for the job. It's not about women, disabilities, things like that. What message would you say to those people? Why should they have a more diverse team?
Look, diversity is a really critical thing, and I should qualify that in some ways, because if I can take VERTO, for instance, and since I've been here, the leadership team has changed. We've got a really, really good team now. Now, I don't have targets as such, and I don't work towards those, but I believe in a diverse workforce. We've just sort of concentrated on making sure we get the right fit for the job. Now, in doing that, our senior executives are 50% male, 50% women. Our wider leadership team is 60% female, 40% male. Now, this just happened naturally. And it's because we don't have blinkers on and say, I want a guy in that job or I want a female in that job. I want the best person. And, sometimes, the female is the absolute best one for the job. Guys don't particularly like it when they're told they're missed out, but that's the reality of it. And we have a really rich, diverse team as well. And it's quite multicultural. If you look at our Sydney office, for instance, we've got a really diverse, multicultural team down there, and they bring a lot of richness to that site. There's a group of ladies there that have an Indian background, and their culture is they share food and do all that, and they bring some wonderful dishes into work, I'll say, and share it around for people at lunchtime. And those that don't necessarily come from that background or have that culture find it absolutely enriching experience, and it's quite engaging, and we have a really cohesive team down there. And that's one of the keys to getting that team, is because they share things, they got that richness of diversity and different cultures down there. I'll go back to what your first question in terms of decision making. We talked about diversity in terms of opinion as well. And the same applies for a multicultural diversity and also gender diversity. There's plenty of people out there that have different experiences in life that we can learn from, and we can become a better person and a better organisation by incorporating those in. So the message to those, just to go back and answer your question, to those that might have an aversion to, say, diversity, I understand from the political point of view, because it's everywhere, and it's some people see it as political. It's not. It's just good business practice. And really, you're missing out.
Yeah, so I mean, definitely good business practice. And I like how you said that you don't have targets, but everything fell because it's just I guess it's in your culture and it's in your vision and mission that you embrace diversity
Absolutely.
and help. But that's even funny how you have 40% males, because I've seen in this industry, it's 20% males or sometimes 10% males. So it's good that you're even attracting males into this workforce as well.
Yeah, well, it's important to have that diversity, I believe. So it's good that we have that mix. And, having the team, it was never, ever intended, but it just fell from the senior executives 50-50.
Yeah. So now I want to talk about mature age apprentices. So I did read some and I was surprised because I've never heard of it myself. And can you tell us a little bit more about mature age apprentices?
And I'm not surprised that you hadn't heard about it, because a lot of people haven't. And that worries me a lot, because mature age people have a lot to offer the workforce. To be a mature age apprentice, you just have to be over 21, okay, and entering apprenticeships. So we've, in our organisation, we've signed up probably over the last 2 years about 1,800 odd mature age apprentices, mainly into carpentry, electrical, those sorts of things. A lot of females going into hairdressing and beauty. So there's a reasonable proportion. I think about 600 of those are female mature age apprentices, which is really, really good to see. Some, I haven't got the breakdown of the stats in front of me, but some would be re-entering the workforce, and that's really, really good to see that they've come in and picked up an apprenticeship. But I think there's a lot of mature age people out there that have got so much in the way of skill that they can offer in terms of apprenticeship, and come in at that level with so much knowledge, and be such a rounded person that those that would have the blinkers on, and ageism is alive and well out there, unfortunately, they need to take it off and look at that. And those that may be displaced at be mature ages as a result of COVID, for instance, might like to think about now might be the time to take up an apprenticeship, because it's something that there can be a really rewarding career. So it doesn't matter what age you are, and that's the beauty of the country we live in. It doesn't matter what age you are, you can still start in an apprenticeship.
That's amazing. And I hope the people that are listening to this, if they did want a career change and they are able to do an apprentice and follow that path towards their dream job, I'm guessing they can. And I did read, was it your article or someone else, or maybe you linked me to it, where a woman, she was a mature age and she's always wanted to be a hairdresser. And she ended up, I'm not sure how old she was. Maybe she was over 40 or maybe over 50. And she started a hairdressing apprentice. So that's great. I mean, when I worked as an employment consultant, I had a lady that was 60 years old. She'd never worked. Her husband had died, and she was crying, saying to me, "I don't know what to do. Centrelink sent me here, and I got her work experience because she's never had any work experience. Her whole life, she was just but a mother and a housewife. So even for people like that have never had a chance, they could always start with a mature age apprenticeship."
Yeah, absolutely. And we've had stories about guys that have wanted to do electrical, but with electrical, you need a reasonable level of mathematics. They didn't have it at the time, but later in life, they've acquired that and then gone into it. And it's just a really enriching story to hear about, people achieving the goal they wanted to.
Yeah, no, it's very, when you hear those stories, they give you meaning and purpose for the work that you do as well. So, Ron, my last question, I am going to ask you now, what does it take to become a CEO? So what career path should somebody follow?
Well, you see, that's the thing, because if you look at my career path, you would think, well, I would never end up as CEO.
Can I just ask before, did you always want to be a CEO? Did you know that you were? Okay, so since you started, at 21, you had a vision, I want to be a CEO.
I wanted to be either general manager or CEO. I wanted to lead an organisation, and I wanted it to be successful. Now, I thought I would never achieve that, because the the path that I was on was not leading me in there, because really, when you back when I was at school, you know, you had this, you went home and to and from school uphill both ways, but back then you left in year 10, like, you know, that was acceptable back in the day and age that I was at school. You would leave in year 10, or if you stayed for year 11 and 12, you'd only ever do that as if you wanted to go into uni. Now, that's something at the time I didn't particularly want to do. I actually left school and became an apprentice.
Wow, okay.
And I was an office equipment technician. So I worked my way through there and moved into sales, ended up managing a sales team. But I knew if I wanted to move any further and achieve that goal, because that goal was still there, I still wanted to be the one that runs the place, if you will. I knew I had to increase my level of educational attainment. So I put myself through uni. I had kids at the time and a family, and was working, but still made it work. Did business and economics at university, got my degree, did post-grad quals. And then when the opportunity came, I was ready. And I got a chance at that. I took it and it worked, and kept progressing through my career from there. So really, the career path can be anything. And that's what I love about this country and the system that we have.
Yeah, we're so lucky.
You can change direction at any point in life. But if someone's in school and wants to go on a linear path straight there, probably need to look at some qualifications in business and economics, certainly along those lines. And as I said, the critical thinking units are really, really important. My son's at uni at the moment. He's doing economics and engineering because he wants to be an engineer, but he wants to run the place too later, he said. So Dad, he said, I'm going to do economics as well.
That's good. Also sales, huh?
Sales was a big thing. And I have to say, the skills I learned in sales certainly helped me excel in this role.
Yeah.
Because you learn how to interact with people, you learn about objections and things like that, and getting to the bottom of the problem. And it's taught me a lot, and it teaches you to be proactive as well. And I've got to say, after I spent 10 years in sales, I learned a lot, and those skills have boded well for me.
Yeah, a lot of people that have been in sales always say that those skills have been life-changing, even in their personal life or in their careers. It's not just about selling products and services, but selling themselves, their ideas. I like how you didn't take a traditional career path that, you know, finish school, go to uni, start a job, but halfway through your life, you had kids, you had commitments, and you still managed to finish your economics and business degree, and you followed the path eventually to where you are today, and you're quite successful as that, and you're quite inspiring on LinkedIn. So anyone that's listening, do look Ron Maxwell up on LinkedIn. So just to my final kind of ending, I want to ask people that want to reach out to you, either an employer that wants to know about VERTO's RTO services or employment services or anything else, or just employees or leaders in employment services, or anyone, where can they find you? Where they can they reach you? Is it your LinkedIn? Is there an email? And also I'll put them all in the show notes. And I'll put VERTO's website as well in the show notes as well.
Yeah, they can certainly contact me on LinkedIn. I'm pretty easy to find there. There's also, they can just call into VERTO 1300 4VERTO or verto.org.au.
Great. Okay. And I'll put them in the show notes. Thank you so much. I've learned a lot from this podcast. It was an honor to have you, and thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for your time, Rana.